Welcome back. Now, it features writers, musicians, historians, theatre practitioners and representatives from historic community radio stations in conversation across 8 episodes around topics such as social justice, racial equity and diversity. Well, that's the 3rd season of the Empty Chair podcast, a Transatlantic Conversation, which kicked off on Thursday and runs until the 17th of February. The series coincides with Black History Month in the USA and focuses on conversations inspired by this initiative. Now, to tell us more, we're joined by board member of PEN South Africa, Bongani Kona. Bongani, good morning. Welcome to Morning Live. Give us background into the Empty Chair podcast, Transatlantic Conversation. I mean, what is it? What is the inspiration behind it?
Good morning, Lebo, and thank you so much. Firstly, just thank you so much for inviting us to be here. And then to answer your question, first I have to give background, if it's okay, about
Sure.
the title of the podcast. And so as PEN South Africa and International, the most important date in our calendar is the 15th of November, and that's the date that we celebrate or we commemorate. It's called the Day of the Imprisoned Writer. And that's the date that we highlight cases of writers that are no longer with us. We highlight we just draw attention to them. And back in the days when we had more in-person gatherings, at the Day of the Imprisoned Writer, we would have an empty chair on stage to symbolize that these are the writers that are not with us. And so that's where the podcast gets its name. And so the first season of the podcast was in 2020, late 2020, or beginning of 2021. And it looked at, we had conversations about writing during the pandemic, the bonds of solidarity that had formed during the pandemic, and bonds of solidarity and resilience. And then season 2 kickstarted what is now also the same subject of season 3, which is a transatlantic, as you rightly pointed out, a transatlantic conversation with artists, writers, historians, architects across the Atlantic, with exploring again our shared histories, exploring again, I think all of the conversations are underpinned by our interest in social justice. And so I hope I've answered your question. I've done a good job.
I want to talk about the importance of why South African and American writers, activists and artists need to reflect on shared histories of struggle and creativity. Why is that so important?
Yeah, I think just to bring those histories into conversation, actually, I'm going to go about it in a roundabout way, just to answer your question in a roundabout way, because I saw one of the pictures that came up is of a novelist, C.A. Davis,
yes,
whose book has come out, and she's one of the guests on season 3. And what her book does, which is like an incredible novel called How to Be a Revolutionary. In the 1950s, for those who may not know, the American writer Langston Hughes kickstarted a correspondence with writers from Dram magazine. And they're collected as letters, and that's what she uses as a kind of jumping off point to explore this history, which may have even been forgotten by both people who are in literary studies and just general readers, and sort of brings it all alive again, and just again explores all of those shared connections in such a beautiful way. And I think, I guess the question is, why not have the conversation?
And I want to talk about the lineup. Who is on the lineup? We've just talked about C.A. Davids, and who else? I think I just saw Linda Skakane as well, who's a musician, which means, it's a mixture of creatives throughout the coming days. Tell us a little bit about that. I think you have Gwen Ansell as well in there.
Yeah, Gwen Ansell, and she's an incredible writer of music, and such an honor. So Gwen Ansell. Also Salim Washington, Tandin Tuli, again, also an incredibly beautiful musician. And then also writers for me, one of the writers I greatly admire, Masande Nchanga. So those are some of the guests that will be there for the next issue, next season.
Mm-hmm. And how do you then do the whole unoccupied chair theme of the festival? Because when it was in person, you could do it and put the unoccupied chair there. Then how do you do it? Because now we are at a stage where we're doing virtual and all those features.
Thank you so much for the question. So each episode is dedicated to, at least we draw attention to the case of one writer who can't be with us, or who has been imprisoned or prosecuted because of their work. So at the end of each episode, or either at the beginning or at the end of each episode, we draw attention to the case of one writer. So even if you listen back, or listeners listen back to previous episodes of the podcast, sort of the last kind of couple of minutes and at the beginning, we draw attention to the case of those writers who can't be with us. And by doing so, we bring their voice into the public domain.
Mm-hmm. Now, we are talking to you in your capacity as a board member of PEN South Africa. What is PEN South Africa?
Thank you again for the question. So I also just need to say that the board member, it's a completely voluntary thing. It's completely voluntary. And for those who may not know, PEN, the global body, PEN is a politically non-aligned worldwide organization that operates in over 100 countries. And our primary purpose really is to advocate for freedom of expression. So we're an activist organization. And the thing that we advocate for is freedom of expression, and also, I guess, the growth and strengthening of our literature.
And as somebody who works at the University of Cape Town in the history department, this must be one of the important events in your calendar, given the fact that other discussions that will be happening at the podcast is Black History Month.
Oh, sorry. Just a correction there. I work at the University of the Western Cape.
Apologies for that.
No worries. No, it's all good. But even outside of that, it's always just, for me, like, it's always just any histories of struggle, histories of solidarity are always really important. It just so happens that here it coincides with Black History Month in the US. But these are conversations, even if you listen back to episodes of the conversation, which are really important to us as PEN South Africa, and to the individuals that are part of PEN South Africa as well.
Which conversation are you looking forward to the most?
I've already spoken about C.A. David's, whose novel, again, How to Be a Revolutionary, I've absolutely enjoyed. And also looking forward to the conversation with Ben Ansel, Salim Washington, Tandine Tuli, because I know very little about music, but I admire musicians, and just looking forward to hearing them in conversation. And also, I just have to say, the conversation between Masande Nchanga and Renee Gladman is also another conversation I'm looking out for. But I've done a cardinal sin. I should have said I'm looking forward to all of them. So.
Look, we forgive you. Listen, if there's one person you must listen to, I can bet you that is Tandine Tuli. She is an amazing jazz artist in this country, one of the youngest. So I can imagine why you must look forward to Tandine Tuli. You know what, Bongani, let's let you go. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. Bongani Kona, board member of PEN South Africa, speaking to us about the third season of the Empty Chair podcast, a Transatlantic Conversation. The series kicked off on Thursday and runs until the 17th of February. All right, before we say goodbye, let's take a look at a few tweets from our viewers regarding events and news stories that caught their attention this past week.